In 1993, a brutal drought tightened its grip on Tanzania's Tarangire ecosystem. Waterholes shrank, grass disappeared, calves weakened. Some elephant families stayed in the hardest hit areas, others left. The difference may have depended on something no satellite could measure and no map could show: what the oldest female remembered. Researchers later found that some matriarchs had lived through another devastating drought more than 30 years earlier. They could not prove that one elephant recalled one exact waterhole from childhood, but the pattern suggested something extraordinary. When the land began to fail again, experience may have helped older females recognize the danger sooner, choose a different route, and lead their families toward better water and food. A decision made in the present may have been guided by a memory formed decades earlier, when the matriarch herself was only a calf following her mother. A route learned by walking may have become the difference between life and death. This is not simply a story about an animal with a good memory. It is a story about how memory becomes leadership, how experience becomes protection, and how an entire family can depend on what one old elephant knows. People often say, "Elephants never forget." The phrase sounds sweet, almost magical, but the truth is more interesting. Elephants do forget. No living brain records everything perfectly. What makes elephant memory remarkable is not that it stores every detail. It is that elephants remember the information that matters: voices, relationships, danger, routes, seasons, and patterns that may return after many years. Their memory is not a party trick. It is survival equipment. An elephant's brain weighs roughly 5 kilograms, making it the largest brain of any living land animal. Yet size alone does not explain what elephants can do. Their brains contain highly developed systems involved in social processing, sensory information, memory, and navigation. But to understand elephant memory, you also have to understand elephant society. Female elephants often remain connected to their mothers, sisters, daughters, and other relatives for life. A family is commonly led by its oldest female, the matriarch. The matriarch has survived more dry seasons, encountered more predators, heard more elephant voices, and faced more moments when one wrong decision could cost a calf its life. Age gives her something younger elephants cannot quickly acquire: a larger library of consequences. Researchers working with African elephants have shown how extensive that social knowledge can be. In playback experiments, elephant families heard recorded contact calls from familiar and unfamiliar females. The herds reacted more strongly to unfamiliar voices, often listening carefully, smelling the air, or bunching together defensively. Older matriarchs were especially effective at judging whether a caller might represent a threat. Based on the size of elephant social networks, scientists estimated that an adult female may be familiar with the calls of around 100 other females. 100 individuals, each voice connected to a history: relative, neighbor, rival, or stranger. Elephants also remember danger. In another experiment, researchers played recordings of lions roaring. Older matriarchs responded more appropriately to the deeper roars of male lions, which generally pose a greater danger to elephants, especially calves, than female lions do. That difference matters because a matriarch's response does not affect only her. When she stops, the herd stops. When she bunches the family together, calves move toward the center. When she decides a sound is dangerous, every elephant behind her inherits the consequence of that judgment. Memory becomes a group defense system. Now return to the drought. During the 1993 crisis in Tarangire, calf deaths were not evenly distributed. Some families moved away from the worst conditions. One group remained and suffered much heavier losses. Researchers did not claim that an elephant carried a perfect mental map of every water source for 30 years. Instead, they proposed something more realistic. Older matriarchs may have recognized a pattern: drying land, disappearing water, weakening grass, and growing distance between safe places. They may not have remembered the past like a photograph. They may have remembered it like a warning. Wild memory does not need every detail. It only needs to warn, you have seen this before, and staying is dangerous. For the youngest calves, that recognition could mean the difference between following an experienced leader and waiting beside a waterhole that would never refill. But elephant memory is not only about land, predators, and survival routes. It is also about other elephants. And this is where the story becomes harder to explain. When elephants encounter the bones of another elephant, they often slow down or stop. They may touch skulls, jaws, and tusks with their trunks, sometimes lifting or moving pieces. Scientists tested whether this attention was simply curiosity. They presented elephants with elephant skulls and ivory, skulls from other large animals, and neutral objects such as wood. The elephants spent more time examining the remains of their own species, especially ivory. The response was not random. Something about elephant remains held greater significance. But this is also where good science must resist an easy story. Controlled experiments have not shown that elephants can reliably identify the skull of one specific relative. We cannot look inside an elephant's mind and declare that its experience is identical to human grief. The caution does not make the behavior less remarkable. The elephants pause. They investigate. They treat the remains of their own kind differently. Whatever the emotion is, recognition is part of the encounter. And now the meaning of memory becomes darker. When a matriarch dies, another female may eventually take the lead. But leadership is not transferred like a title. The new leader does not instantly inherit decades of experience. She may know the same roots and have watched earlier decisions, but some knowledge disappears with the individual who carried it. Research on elephant groups disrupted by culling and translocation found that social damage could remain visible years later. Some groups were less accurate when judging unfamiliar elephant calls and social threats than families with more intact age structures. The loss was not only numerical. It changed how the survivors interpreted the world. Poaching raises a similar concern because hunters often target large, older elephants. Removing an experienced matriarch can erase ecological and social knowledge before younger elephants have fully learned it. Young elephants can adapt, especially when surrounded by supportive relatives and similar-aged companions. But resilience is not instant recovery. A family cannot recreate every season remembered by a dead matriarch. And here, the familiar phrase changes shape. Elephants never forget is not important because it makes elephants sound wise or sentimental. It matters because memory moves through their society. One elephant remembers a route. Another recognizes a caller. A younger female watches how the matriarch responds to lions. A calf learns where to stand when danger comes. Knowledge passes through sound, movement, attention, and repetition. The herd remembers partly because individuals remember together. Now picture the dry plain again. The oldest female stands at the front. Behind her are daughters, sisters, granddaughters, and calves. One calf is small enough to pass beneath its mother's belly. The matriarch raises her trunk. Elephants can detect low-frequency calls over long distances. They can also sense vibrations traveling through the ground. The landscape speaks to them through sound, scent, and touch. Then the matriarch turns. At first, the herd hesitates. Then the others follow. Perhaps they walk for hours, perhaps for days. The route may not lead to a place she remembers perfectly. It may lead only toward conditions that feel safer than the ones behind them. But that may be enough. And somewhere in the moving line, a young female is watching. She watches where the old matriarch turns, when she stops, which smells make her cautious, and how she reacts when distant rumbles travel across the ground. The young female does not know that she is studying for a future crisis. She is simply following. Years pass, calves are born, seasons change, familiar voices disappear. New ones enter the social world. One day, the young female may become the oldest elephant left. Then the rain may fail again. The water holes may shrink. The calves behind her may have no memory of a drought, and the herd may become quiet, waiting for her to choose. In that moment, she will not carry a written map. She will carry fragments, a route once walked, a warning once heard, a decision once watched, the memory of an older female turning away from danger. That is the real power of an elephant's memory. It does not preserve the past for nostalgia. It converts the past into action. A remembered voice becomes recognition. A remembered roar becomes caution. A remembered drought becomes movement. And a lesson learned by one generation becomes a chance for the next generation to survive. So no, elephants do not remember everything. They remember enough. Enough to know who belongs. Enough to recognize when a threat is greater than it sounds. Enough to stop beside the remains of their own kind. Enough, perhaps, to lead a family toward water that no young elephant knows exists. The old matriarch's greatest achievement may not be that she saves the herd once. It may be that another elephant watches her do it. Because long after her footprints disappear, the direction she chose can remain alive in the memory of the family. And years later, during another dry season, an elephant who once followed may lift her trunk, turn toward a distant horizon, and become the reason the herd survives.